Wait. I think a few wires got crossed there. Let me try this again. There we go! Hello, my fellow hunters, and welcome! As today we answer a very important question. A question that sparks debate across the world of Monster Hunter. A question to which everyone has their own answer, their own favorites. Who would win? Who is better? Who is stronger? Between the three Elder Dragon level invaders in Deviljho. Rajang!
Monkey.
And Bazelgeuse.
I'm the Basil Bommy Boy, gonna toy with you like, well, oh, a toy. Oh boy, if you're hunting, I drop in.
Now, before we begin, a few things. Number one, this is of course for fun, though I will use every bit of both monster and real-world animal knowledge I can to come up with an answer here. Two, I have tried my best to make this as fair as possible, my own biases aside. And number three, well, if you like fun little fighty monster matchups like this, let me know. Please consider liking the video, it helps us out a lot. And hey, suggest a matchup for the future, and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it when it happens. And if you want to go the whole hog, we're talking full pig, why did I say that? Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon. The patrons are the reason that we're still here, and if you'd like us to keep existing, well, it would mean everything if you got on board with the link down below. So without further ado then, let's get into this. So Deviljho, Rajang and Bazelgeuse are, well, very, very even. Of course they are. They're very equivalent monsters. They're all invaders, they all are Elder Dragon tier, they all have a lot of power, a lot of unique weaponry, and they all royally ruin your day when they arrive uninvited. And to be fair, they royally ruin your day when they arrive invited too. I have 11 categories, yes, 11 categories that we will be putting them head-to-head in, and then the average score of each will determine the final ranking. So, to begin with then, strength. This is probably the biggest category of them all, and by strength I mean physical strength here. So, the weakest of the three is Basil. That is easy enough to do. He is just kind of finely strong for his size. He's not ridiculously strong, he's not ridiculously weak, he's just strong for a monster as big as he is. His strength, well, ironically doesn't lie in strength, though he does have a lot of mass and he can throw it around, and he does indeed do that, and to other monsters that would be quite threatening, but to these two, not so much. The big strength battle here comes between Monkey and Dinosaur. Rajang, relative to his size, is the strongest physically monster in all of Monster Hunter. If a Deviljho was shrunk down to the size of a Rajang, Rajang would be hilariously stronger than him. And that's wherein the problem lies, because Deviljho isn't the size of Rajang, and in the animal kingdom, well, size really does matter, if you know what I mean. And we can of course look at our real-world gorillas. They are unbelievably powerful. Pound for pound, one of the most powerful animals on the planet. They are ungodly strong for their general size, and could snap a human in half rather effortlessly.
Help me.
Whereas T-Rexes, no, I mean, they were obviously really strong, but we don't really have as much of a comparison there. But to stay with the gorillas, even though a gorilla is so strong, it would lose 9 times out of 10 to a bear, it would lose 9 times out of 10 to a tiger, it would lose 10 times out of 10 to an elephant, but then again, nearly every animal on the planet could come close to an elephant. They're just ridiculous. And the reason they're ridiculous is because they're giant and muscly. And nothing can deal with that level of size and power. It just can't. So that while the gorilla is stronger relatively than a bear or a tiger if they were to be made the same size, that doesn't really help because it's still not bulky enough to handle the still impressive weight and raw striking power that those larger animals can bring. And herein gives us our answer between Deviljho and Rajang, and as much as I hate to say it because I do really respect Rajang's pure punch, he is, I think, on balance, physically weaker than Deviljho. Deviljho can lift a Diablos above its head. Rajang can pick up an impressively sized rock, of course, but unless you go like full Apex Frenzied Rajang, you can't get something more impressive than Deviljho can do. Though that said, a punch from Rajang focused on the small surface area relative of his fist is going to be much more devastating than a full, body shoulder check from Deviljho, but that's a little bit too specific. In general, raw strength, applicable power, pushing against something, a Deviljho's gonna probably have an easier time than a Rajang, but it is close. In any case, that's how the strength lines up. Now, I realize I said there's 11 categories, and we are nearly 6 minutes in here, and I've done one of them. The others are going to be a little bit quicker, but physical strength is really quite an important category. Next up, elemental strength. This is easy. Deviljho's dragon is obviously impressive. Dragon is a very powerful element, arguably the most powerful of the 5, and utilized properly, but Deviljho doesn't utilize it properly. It is raw, unfiltered, crude, effective in what he needs it for, but compared to, well, a Armageddon of explosive scales or a piercing, rock-penetrating, destroying lightning beam, well, it's those two. But which one's more potent? Well, in general, Bazel's explosions are, because, well, explosions are really goddamn powerful. They are ridiculously good at destruction, at killing, at general just awfulness inflicted on everything about them. Bazel is ludicrously effective as a predator because he wields mini natural grenades. I really can't express how good that is. If you're roaming through a jungle and you see a red glowing eyes out the gloom and you're like, oh no, it's gonna pounce on me with claws, that's one thing. But if you're like, oh no, and then a grenade lobs towards you, well, that's fucking dire! But this is a fight against each other, and Bazel is weak to lightning, and Rajang's lightning laser is insane. It can go through rock unless it's held by an admiral, and it can be used against Kirin, and Kirin is almost manifestation of lightning. It is powered by Kirin, and lightning itself is one of the most powerful forces of nature that exists. In terms of combating each other, Rajang has to take this. Then we have agility. This one is simple. Bazel is slow, he is big, he is laborious, he is cumbersome. Deviljho can at least leap about the place, he's got a bit of nuance to him, but he's still quite a straightforward brute. Obviously, neither one of them can compare to Rajang's nimble hop and hop and hop, precise, dexterous control of his body and where he is. Easy. Speed, which is of course technically different to agility, just how fast can they go? Well, Bazel wins this because he can fly, and flying is obviously a big advantage here, and he goes very, very quick in a straight line. He can get a long distance much, much more rapidly than the other two. After that, then, it is Rajang, who can move at quite the pace, and because of how, well, again, agility-full he is, terrain doesn't really give him much pause. Deviljho, however, has just got to kind of march forward, and although T-Rexes were incredibly fast, his bulk makes terrain traversal quite difficult, and thus gives him a bit of a disadvantage here. Next up then is a bit of a more abstract category. It is in-game difficulty. How hard are they to hunt for an average player? Now obviously I can only answer this for myself because I'm just so painfully average. But I would say, trying to be as objective as possible, it's hard to argue that when it comes to monster difficulty, it very clearly goes, Bazel is the easiest, followed by Deviljho, followed by Rajang, and I think that's pretty much true across every generation and incarnation of them. So, yeah. Then we have a slightly different but I think important metric here, and that is turf wars, because although they are mostly a gameplay gimmick, a badass awesome one, but a gimmick nonetheless, they do at least give us an indication of strength. Basil doesn't have a turf war with any Elder Dragon. He does have a turf war with Deviljho, and they draw. That is kind of his best showing. Deviljho, however, does have turf wars with, well, as I said, Basil that draws, but he also has turf wars, at least in his savage form, with the Elder Dragons in a beam battle, and they are draws. But that is Savage Deviljho, which is much more powerful than a regular Deviljho. That's kind of his best showing. But his base form, you know, dunks on stuff like Diablos, as I mentioned earlier, suplexing above his head. But when it comes to turf wars, it's hard not to look at Rajang and go, yeah, okay, fair enough. Not only does normal Rajang turf war with elders, he really fucks them up. Like, he gives them quite the thwack, and they are not looking too hot. It could be argued to be a draw, but I think Rajang really holds his own. Now, I know they do both take damage, so technically it's a draw, but it really doesn't look like Rajang is struggling here, now does it? He also has a turf war with, of course, Kirin, at which point he, you know, destroys him, snaps off the horn, and, well, job's a good'un.
I'm Rajang. Bang! Ha ha ha! Is the plan gonna rip off your arms like...
Damn!
I'm just saying this is monkey business, and now you'll witness to the power to dismiss the Elder Dragons, so check this. Crunch.
And this is a big deal here, and I think it really does lead into my next point. But first, we also have the turf war between Rajang and Deviljho themselves, of which it is a draw. We get an example of Deviljho's raw fury, but we also get an example of Rajang's single well-placed punch being absolutely devastating to even something of Deviljho's size. But either way, I think turf wars really end up like this. Next up then, we have, well, the threat or their power when it comes to the lore of Monster Hunter, the actual world, ignoring gameplay. Basil is the definite loser here. He doesn't really cause that much of a ruckus. I know you might be like, what? He causes a ruckus in my hunts? Jesus Christ. But in terms of the guild, they're not too fussed. Deviljho and Rajang are much more alarming. Rajang is the only non-Elder Dragon to confirmedly hunt Elder Dragons. Presumably Deviljho would too. He can take some of them on, and obviously have no problem eating them, but in terms of actual, we have got examples of it. It is fact, we know it. Rajang is the Elder Dragon hunter in, well, Kirin, of which he specializes in hunting. Now, being evolved to specifically hunt one Elder Dragon is like, okay, yeah, duh, obviously he can then hunt that one Elder Dragon. That's different from generally hunting Elder Dragons.
Nerd Gigante, and I see you've come to play.
Yes, Nerd Gigante, you go you, sir. So I think it's hard to argue that Rajang isn't lore-wise the strongest organism based on what he can do. However, I think Deviljho does take the overall threat when it comes to the world because of what he does to ecosystems. He decimates them, he devours, he renders them lifeless, he renders them barren. If a Deviljho shows up, the guild is on high alert because he needs to be stopped, because otherwise it will royally screw the environment wherever he has appeared. Whereas Rajang and Basil just kind of won't. They'll go about their business being nigh unchallengeable by other monsters, they'll do what they want, get what they want, but Deviljho will go out of his way to just, he's the world eater, right? That is a problem, and he definitely carries with him the most serious oh shit when he appears. So this is this. Finally then, we have that X factor, the special skills, the things that make them unique that can't really be that evenly compared. Deviljho loses this one, right? Yes, he's got the dragon, but that's compared to the explosions and the lightning, we've done that. Other than that, when he enrages, he just gets a little bit physically weaker. And we'll talk about their relative durability tankiness after this, but he exposes his wounds, his scars reopen, his muscles show through, it's threatening, it's intimidating. And don't get me wrong, in terms of the willpower to keep going, to keep striving, to keep attacking, he is there. The adrenaline pumps, he is mindless, he is overwhelming, and he will never stop until he dies. But he doesn't gain, really, anything too crazy, whereas Rajang gains the Red Arms Kaioken Super Hard mode, which make his already devastating punches that much more, and is a really quite impressive secret weapon. A second layer of Enrage is not something to be sniffed at. But Basil beats both because, well, I mean, one, he can fly. That's, again, really needs to be taken advantage of, and in a fight here, he can just go in the air and bomb them, and there's not really much you can do. You kind of have to assume he'll be at least fightable to make this comparison, but he does at least need to take a win by the fact that, yeah, bombing runs is ridiculous against anything that can't fly away from them. It's actually really horrifying to be on the ground during that, both mentally and, you know, physically with the bits you're now missing. So, in terms of the X Factor, I think it definitely goes like this. Then, durability, as I said. Who can take the most punishment? Who is the hardest to put down? This one is pretty simple. Rajang is small. He's sturdy, sure, but he doesn't even have scaling. He's got fur and skin. His arm hardening is effective, but it's just his arms. He is a glass cannon. He's not frail by any means, but he is definitely the weakest in terms of, you know, actually damaging him, landing a mortal blow, killing him. Here, he is definitely the most vulnerable to injury. Then we have Basil. He is, well, much harder to injure than, ironically, Deviljho, despite not beating him, and his shock absorption from his explosions is second to none. He can take impacts. He can take impacts probably better than most other monsters because he has to do by his own design. In order to do what he does with his explosive scales, he has to be incredibly resistant to them, which means resistance to heat, resistance to any kind of shrapnel that would be torn up from the ground like little shards of rock, and most of all, resistance from the shockwave pumped out by an explosion that at that point-blank range should shred your inside organs and basically ruin you from the inside out. But it doesn't because his scales are exceptionally shock-absorbent. That's impressive, but not as impressive as the sheer willpower, the sheer adrenaline-fueled, single-minded rage focus to keep going no matter how injured you are. Deviljho might take less wounding to kill or be easier to wound than a Basil, but he will keep going much longer than you would think possible because he simply works like that. Flooded with adrenaline, flooded with a single-minded fury to not stop, the amount of Deviljhos that annihilate their opponent and then die from wounds that they received halfway through the fight is excessive, and that has to be commended. Finally, we have to talk about, well, intelligence, strategy, smarts, and, yeah, this one's pretty easy. Deviljho is at the bottom of the pile. That single-minded fury that keeps him going despite being mortally wounded, it might win him there, but it loses him here. He's not the most strategic, he's not the cleverest. Basil is next, who is just kind of normal in that regard for the animal, for the Monster Hunter world, and then Rajang with his primate brain, with tools, with the ability to work stuff out, is definitely up here at the top. He can, well, hunt Kirin. That again requires a little bit of nuance. It's not just pure brute strength. You have to catch the ridiculously fast horse that can move so fast it can blink and appear to teleport. So, yeah, Rajang does take this one. And with that done, I could have talked about any category for so much longer than I did. You have no idea, but I hope this was still a satisfying blitz through. And again, I would love to know your thoughts yourself on each category. But this is how it boiled down. So as you can see, in third place, it's Bazelgeuse. In second place, it is Deviljho. And in first place, and our strongest of the three elder dragon invaders that love to scrap, it is, well,
you have shown me, monkey.
Rajang. But hey, don't take my word for it, because I did a poll with you guys too, and with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of votes, you pretty much agree with the conclusion, and that's quite cool to see. So there you go, guys. Let me know if you like this, but for another grouping of monsters. Like if you have enjoyed this, subscribe for more, and yeah, please, really, let me know your own thoughts here. I love a little lore fighty discussions. It's just fantastic. Until we meet again then, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces.